I've seen a lot of posts recently talking about millennial nostalgia and how the millennial generation, of which I fall into, can't seem to let go of the past, and that we're just constantly nostalgic and clinging on to that late 90s, early 2000s era. And I think that's totally correct. I think that that's accurate. And I think that there's a couple of reasons why, and I kind of just wanted to give my 2 cents on the topic. I was thinking about this today in general. I'm always kind of thinking about the better years, the how life was before technology completely consumed our souls. But I was just looking around my living room today, and I was thinking about how me, a man in his mid 30s, my house does not look like how an adult's house looked when I was a kid. My house looks like an evolution of my teenage bedroom. I have my movie collection full on display. I have posters on the wall. I have figures displayed about, and there's nothing about my house that looks anything like how I remember an adult's house looking when I was a kid. All of their trinkets and hobbies and collectibles would be thrown in a box somewhere, stuffed in the garage. It wouldn't be something they proudly display. It would be something that's like, oh yeah, that's something I liked when I was younger. But my generation seems to be really, really holding on to any semblance of our youth that we possibly can. And is it that we can't let go of the past because we just all hate our miserable lives? I don't know, maybe. But I think there are a lot of factors. I think there's a lot of reasons why. I'll get the obvious out of the way, and I think this is basically every generation to some degree. And I think that just goes to our perception of time and the fact that when you're a kid, you are really living in the present moment. I don't know kids nowadays, if they are or not with so much access to technology, but back in our generation, in the millennial generation, when we were younger, I think that we get nostalgic for a lot of these things, for these movies and TV shows and music and stuff, and video games, because when we were consuming them when we were younger, we didn't have this all-encompassing, daunting feeling in the back of our brain saying like, hey, are you making enough money? You need to pay the bills. You have this responsibility. You have to go here. You have to do this. You have to go to work, yada, yada, yada. And this is what I mean, like every generation kind of deals with this, but we attach and identify, I think, this sense of freedom to these old pieces of media now, these like 20, 30-year-old pieces of media, because when we were watching them when we were kids, it was like we were locked in because there wasn't anything else compelling us to have to go do afterwards, these responsibilities. As a kid, you have this sort of ultimate freedom. You do and you don't. Obviously, you have to obey and do everything that like your parents and teachers say, yada, yada, but you're not responsible for holding down the fort, right? You're not responsible for making the money. You're not responsible for paying the bills. And so you have an ability to enjoy things at a level that I think you're never going to be able to enjoy again. And there is an aspect that we're always kind of chasing that feeling, that we always want that feeling of being immersed into something and not having to worry about other things. We want to be able to escape from our daily lives. And that might be, I think, one of the main reasons why millennials are just so obsessed with cartoons that we watched and video games that we played, because it just takes us back to a time where we didn't have to worry about the immense responsibility of adulthood, right? And we miss that, right? Everybody would miss that. I think also is obviously the perception of time. When you're a kid, a year feels like a year. It feels like a long time. You go from like 8th grade to 9th grade, and it feels like a year took place. As an adult, a year feels like a week. A year goes by so quickly, and there's so many different reasons for that too, because obviously as a kid, a year of your life would be, let's say you're like 12 years old, a year is 1/12 of your life. That's a big portion. But when you're like 30, a year is only 1/30th of your life. So it's, your perception of time is so different. Also, when you're younger, things are constantly changing, constantly evolving, constantly being different. You have a different grade of school every year. You're growing up. Your interests and things that you gravitate to tend to change. The people that you're around tend to change. If your parents move, you move with them. There's all these significant events to measure time. And when you get older, things tend to fall into routine, and you have the same year over and over and over and over again, unless you specifically intentionally put forth massive effort to change it, which is just something that you really have to like find that discipline within you in order to do. And if you don't, 10 years will go by and you've had the same year 10 times. And one of the ways that people used to disrupt that and change that and have more experiences is generations before us would go on like yearly vacations. Vacations were a big thing in the generation that came before me. But to my knowledge, a lot of millennials don't go on vacations because we don't have the money to do that. And it doesn't matter if you if you are just working a steady job, or if you went to college, if you didn't go to college, if you're trying to work for yourself. I find it rare, at least around where I live, to find somebody in my age bracket that has enough money on hand to just do things like go on a trip across the country, or go to a vacation spot, or go on a cruise, or this, or go to a different country. Like all of these traveling aspects of the generation before us that they used to do, used to be able to make enough money to where you could take your 2 weeks vacation, you could go do something. I feel like a large portion of our generation doesn't have that. So our outlet is not necessarily all of these brand new experiences, because we are so limited financially, that our outlet is returning to the things that gave us joy, to the things that gave us happiness when we were younger. And I think that that's easier to access. It's easier to access a TV series or a video game or something from our youth that we remember very fondly, rather than trying to figure out a way to create a bunch of new experiences. And I do think that it's important to have new experiences and to continue and to progress and all that. I'm just saying that it's much more difficult now than it has been before, because people are finding it very, very hard to manage anything beyond just paying their bills or buying groceries. And so what do you do to, let off some steam or escape the world for a little bit? Well, let's go with old reliable. And I'm just using vacations as an example. There's probably many other examples you could come up with too. Another thing about our generation, and that you hear people talk about, is how our relation to technology was. And it is massively different than it is now. But the thing is, we never really noticed the change, because technology evolved so damn quickly that it was just kind of hard to process that things were changing as much as they actually were. A lot of people in my generation talk about going to the video store and renting videos, and I think that the way that we consume media now is so vastly different than it used to be before. Like, there was a time where watching a movie was an event. It was something you looked forward to, whether it was going to the video store and looking through all the films and picking up the boxes and reading the back of them, or finding that hidden gem, or being able to rent that horror movie that you'd heard about from your friends or something like that. It was an experience. It required effort. You had to leave your house, you had to drive to the store, you had to look through the movies, you had to hope that the one that you wanted was there and wasn't rented out. And you would come back home and watch it, or you would gather the family around and watch it. And watching a movie was a communal experience. It was something that all week long you couldn't wait for. And now it does feel like media is much more disposable. Now, with 10,000 different streaming services and scrolling through, and you don't really get a good sense of the film as much as you did when you were able to like pick up an actual box and look at it and read it. Now you just see a one sentence description and the thumbnail on Netflix or something. And now when people watch movies, they're pretty much just on their phone the whole time. They're just scrolling through, and we're not focused on the movie. We have this ADHD TikTok brain conditioning to just, if something doesn't grab our attention in 30 seconds, then it's like, oh, we got to move on to the next thing, Like, and even I find it difficult sometimes, to not reach for my phone. And then I find myself doing it. I'm like, what the hell? Like, how, has life really changed so much that you can't focus on a 90-minute movie without grabbing your phone and scrolling on it? And I think that the millennial generation and the generation above it, that frustrates us, because movies used to be special. TV shows used to be special. These were these things that we would look forward to, that we would share with others, that because it was harder to come by, I think that we valued it more. And also the way that now, the younger generation doesn't even really watch movies. They watch YouTube, they watch influencers. It's a whole different thing. And I've also noticed this massive refusal from younger generations to go back and watch older films, and people will just outright not watch them because they're older. Millennial generation was also one of the last generations to be exposed to multiple decades worth of media, because we still had cable. Because we didn't have streaming services yet, we got to watch older shows. We got to watch shows on Nick at Night, shows from the 60s, the 70s. We got to watch older movies. One of the things that I looked forward to the most was the New Year's Eve Twilight Zone marathon on the Sci-Fi Channel. Old black and white TV series, one of the best TV shows ever made. And I was like an 8-year-old kid who loved the Twilight Zone. What 8-year-old kid nowadays is going back and watching a show that's that old and actually being excited about it and actually, looking forward to watching it? I remember watching the old Universal monster films, Dracula, Frankenstein. I'd be so invested, so stoked in it. Just recognize I'm wearing a Godzilla shirt. I'd watch the old Godzilla movies and I loved it, But now, would a kid be able to watch a Godzilla movie with a man in a suit portraying Godzilla and not have it be CGI and actually be able to enjoy it? Or would they just dismiss it outright because it's old? I think because we got exposed to multiple decades worth of media, that we really got a good sense of different types of movies from different eras and different voices, whereas now everything is so specific and so catered by algorithms that you don't really get as much exposure to a wide variety of storytelling through history as we did. And after cable went away and everyone switched to just streaming, now you don't get that. And now it's the only thing that's promoted to you is based upon your algorithms. And that's the other thing I'm going to get into next, is that I think the internet, I think algorithms have ruined so much of what the internet was. And I think the internet now is so much chaos compared to what it used to be. So once again, the millennial generation was kind of the generation that grew up as home computers and internet and everything was becoming more mainstream. Like, I remember a time not having a computer in the house. I remember having just the computer room. There was one computer in the house that everyone shared. And then slowly it rolled out and became different over time. Now we're connected to the internet so much, it's just this all-consuming, all-encompassing thing. But back in the 2000s, it was something that you kind of went to just to have fun. The internet was fun. There actually was a time, I know this sounds crazy, but there actually was a time where the internet was just fun. It was just goofy cat videos and angry video game nerd and all of the fun stuff that we enjoyed back then. It had good communities of people. Yeah, there's always been shitty people on the internet, but for the most part, it was a place of enjoyment. It was a place that people went, once again, to escape the world and have a good time, have a few laughs, share some memes, and that was it. And now I feel like the internet is just so filled with hatred and animosity and people just looking to tear each other down at every single turn, and people warring against each other, and the dumbest people you could possibly find. It's like, there was a time where, like, the younger generation was the generation that was on the internet the most, right? There was a time, like, before everyone's mom and grandma got Facebook and only younger people had it. Actually, we had MySpace is what we had, which was way better than Facebook. And then it shifted, and now everybody is on the internet all the time. There is no escape. You want to escape the real world and go on the internet, have some fun, you're going to just end up looking at something that pisses you off, whether it's just people that are trying to be influencers going out and harassing people to try to get views. That infuriates me, or you're looking at some horrible news story about something that's happening in the world, or you're looking at just people raging and hating and arguing with each other nonstop. It's like, where did I Can Has Cheeseburger go? Where did the Ultimate Showdown go? Where did these fun outlets that just allowed us to have a good time, Newgrounds back in the day, Foamy the Squirrel, Strong Bad Emails, Homestar Runner, like that's what the internet used to be, man, and it's not that anymore. And it sucks that it's not. And algorithms cater things and, monitor everything that you do and push things towards you and sell things towards you. Everything is ad-based now. Everything is pushing you towards looking at particular things rather than just discovering things. And I think that's also it. It's the sense of discovery. Just how I was talking about with TV channels that would give you older movies, older shows, things that you wouldn't expect that you would be interested in, but that's what's on TV, so that's what you watch, and so you got exposed to a bunch of different things throughout history. Just like that on the internet, you used to just find things. It wasn't like a catered algorithm to like, okay, you watch this kind of content, so now the only thing that's going to be recommended to you are the people making the exact same kind of content, so now you're trapped in this bubble that you can never escape from, and the algorithm just feeds you the same shit over and over. There literally used to be a website called Stumble Upon. It might still exist, I don't know, where you would just click a button and it would just take you to a random website. So that kind of stuff existed, and I feel like that is something that people don't get now. Like I said, things were harder to come by, so I think we appreciated it more. When it comes to being a fan of something like anime, the millennial generation grew up in the Toonami era, which really made it feel like a communal experience. You had a TV station that had a block of shows, you had a host that would talk to the audience, you had all of the different Toonami promos and everything, and it would just lock you in and get you stoked for it. Anime was really, really hard to come by, so you appreciated it when you got it. Now it's just everywhere and everyone's into it, and it's just not the same as it used to be. It doesn't look the same, it doesn't feel the same, it's not as exciting to find. The art style's completely changed, the way that they make it has completely changed, and so that's different. The way that TV shows are produced are different now. Everyone takes the Stranger Things model where they make like 8 episodes and then throw it all on at once, you binge it, you forget it, and then it doesn't get another season for another 4 or 5 years or whatever. TV shows used to have like 22 episodes per season. People were locked in every Wednesday night. You'd see a new episode, you'd talk about it with your friends the next day. It was a whole thing. Same thing with music. You'd come home from school and you'd watch like TRL or something, and you'd get the new music videos, you'd get tour dates. Also, I noticed that a lot of things from the millennial generation are still popular. Like, I don't play Fortnite, but I noticed that Fortnite just put in like the Power Rangers, like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, right? So like, it's like, that's our shit. Like Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, that's from our era. And it's like all of those things are still popular. It's still like music from our era, people still talk about, still bring up, still listen to. And it hasn't really gone away. And it seems like that special place in time, that 90s, maybe late 80s, 90s, 2000s, was just a very special era where technology was limited enough to where it was fun, it was enjoyable, there was access to great things, there was information, but it wasn't this all-consuming, all-encompassing thing where you just can't escape being online. There was like a freedom to it, there was like, now everything is constantly recorded and constantly documented, and it feels like everybody is just always playing everything up for the camera. I realized the irony of this as I make YouTube videos, but I always wanted to make YouTube videos so that I could have just like an outlet to be creative. You know what I mean? Like I never wanted to be like an influencer or something because I didn't grow up watching influencers. That's not what inspired me. It's just movies inspired me, TV shows inspired me, anime inspired me. Like that's why I want to make videos. But now it's like, everyone's trying to get that viral hit, that viral clip where they want to go out and harass people for content. Or now I was saying, like, I remember when I was younger, if you like recorded yourself dancing and lip syncing to a song and somebody saw that, they'd probably think that was like pretty cringy, pretty funny. But now that's an entire industry. It's literally what TikTok is. It's just people just lip syncing and dancing and posting it and getting millions of views. It's crazy. But we had a freedom too, because if you would go hang out with a bunch of your friends or go to a party or something, maybe you had like a flip phone, there was texting and stuff, but it wasn't like everybody was being recorded 24/7. It wasn't like everything that you do and everything that you say was constantly under this lens where it's like, oh, I better not say the wrong thing or, make a bad joke or something like that because of fear of some kind of repercussion, down the line. It's like you were able to just have fun and shoot the shit and talk shit to each other. Like the way that we would talk shit to each other is just astounding. Like I just don't see how that would fly these days. You know what I mean? But there was an aspect to it of living in the moment. There was an aspect to it to where I didn't feel like I was constantly being monitored all the time like we are now. You were able to go out with your friends, have a good time, not take your phones out. And then when you got home, you maybe would get on the internet for an hour or two, and that was it. And then you just lived your life. Media was special because it was harder to come by. It was more fun to find. And I think a lot of us realized we were kind of sold a lie by the generation above us. It's like I noticed like whether you went to college and got a degree, which was something that was massively pushed for my generation, and I know that I disappointed a lot of people by not going to college, but that was what was pushed, right? But I noticed that there's always exceptions, but generally, whether you did or didn't, most people ended up kind of in the same bracket, and our only escape from that, our only solace, are just doing the things that gave us enjoyment when we were younger. And I think that that's okay, as long as you don't get so stuck in the past that you're incapable of living in the present. But I think that it makes perfect sense for the millennial generation to be really nostalgic about the things that we had and the things that we've lost. I know I think about it a lot, not just because I do miss those days, but also because of how fast time flies. My 20s were chaotic. They were a mess. They went by in a blur. Currently in my mid 30s, and I don't know. I don't feel much different than I did, nearly 20 years ago, but everything around me is different, and it's just hard to keep up with. And things that I attach to, things that I resonate with, it becomes old without you realizing it. I remember I saw a post that was like talking about retro anime. And it was an anime that came out in like 2005. And I was like, that's considered retro now. Fuck. Like retro anime to me is like Astro Boy or Robotech. You know what I mean? Like not Paprika. And it's crazy because, I really do feel like I'm just not an adult yet a lot of the time. I think the most important thing is doing your responsibilities, right? Making sure your bills are paid, yada, yada. But like, I always still feel like I'm waiting for life to start. I'm always like, when is it going to actually begin? Not realizing that I'm already halfway through it. And I suppose the only solace in that is just knowing that I'm not alone, since I have seen a lot of these millennial nostalgia posts and people talking about it and my generation talking about it. So yeah, I don't know. It's a crazy world. I don't know what it's going to be like in the future. I look at things and I don't understand it. And I'm so against like AI creation and where things are going to be going when it comes to the consumption of media, which is something that I've always loved and enjoyed. I've always been obsessed with movies and storytelling and stuff. And I just, where I see it now, I don't like. And where I see it going is kind of terrifying. But I'm still going to try to do everything that I can to accomplish the goals that I want to accomplish. And I guess I'll just always have to remember that I grew up in one of the best times. And I really do mean that. And I think that probably every generation believes that. But I think if you look at the evidence and you look objectively, I really do think that the millennials had it the best in our youth. Not now. Now we're paying for it. It's the give and take. But I think that we had it best in our youth. And it's okay to remember those things fondly. Just don't forget to never stop growing. I'll end with that.